I actually think the issues aren't your assets or your debt, it's the people. I actually am going to recommend to you that you seek a family therapist. I knew it before I walked into that meeting. It was a 13-hour meeting, the longest I've ever done.
Wow.
It was so evident to me that there's a genuine love there, that they're just focusing on the short term.
Welcome to hard ground. Welcome to hard ground.
So through the GoGrain app that Tim and his team have put together, they have basically taken the docket book and they have digitalized it. It's trackable, traceable, teachable, adoptable, cheap. Okay. Honestly, for the amount of money that goes out of the farm through the form of grain, everybody on farm knows how to use this very simple, easy to use app, whether it's going from a silo, a ring, a bunker, on a contract to warehouse, whether it's for seed, all these sorts of things.
And I would like to just say one for the ladies, that I no longer have to worry about washing these little pretty books.
Yeah, so
You leave them in your pocket.
like in 2021, we lost 3 trucks because Steph washed one of these books.
I'm lying.
Check the pocket.
No, get on GoGrain.
And then you don't have to worry about the pockets anymore. It's
Never,
done.
never lose a truck again.
Never lose a truck again. Hello, everybody, and welcome to an episode of Hard Ground. James Hamilton, Cultivate Advisory, is the founder of Cultivate Advisory. He's a facilitator. He's a farmer. He has extensive experience across many sectors, including government, corporate, and the family-based operations. So basically, if you don't know him, he's a superhuman without the cape, and please don't shoot him because I don't think he's quite figured out how to dodge bullets yet. So, James, welcome to Hard Ground, mate. Really great to have you on.
Thank you. You've done a bit of homework. As soon as you said what I'd done, I thought, yeah, I don't even relate to that time and era of doing work, consulting work in local government and state, and then also federal. That was a lifetime ago. Yeah. So now it's just succession planning.
Yeah, yep, and that's what we're here to talk about. So it's great to have you on the show, mate. And I think, like, just to kick this off, is one thing that's been sort of buzzing around in my mind with all these conversations inside the area of succession. What is a succession planner exactly? Because there's lots of different, like we've had communications experts and pre-succession things and lawyers and the accountant that might do in the succession as well. But you're a succession
You're like
planner.
the actual person, the actual succession planner.
Yeah. So I think it's really important, and I'm glad you asked that, because as an industry, it seems to be a growth area. People have wised up, and in crude terms, there's organisations out there that have gone, hang on, this is another income stream to us that has all kinds of issues attached to that. I'm really clear the lane I swim in, and that is I'm the person that facilitates that conversation so that the family can actually feel that they were all heard, understood, work through options. And options are based on the needs of the individuals, but also the collective needs of the family. Okay. And that I have found has been what unlocks. And in fact, it's not just succession. If people understand that everyone comes from a point of view of needs and then breaking that down, any conversation where you're needing an agreement, if you understand needs, you'll get an agreement. So needs are not just financial, they're emotional, they're physical, and they're symbolic. So once I understand what they are, I then will be working with the family, and we reference the asset base and also the debt and look at how can that support as many of the individual needs and, importantly, the collective needs. Now, just because someone says they have a need, look, I'm hamming the situation, but for a brand new green header and a tractor doesn't necessarily mean they're going to get that in this process. They might.
I agree with you on that, James, very much so.
So it's just working through those needs. So look, I'm that person that facilitates that conversation so everyone can feel comfortable, heard, understood, and we work through to a point of in-principle agreement. And then that is when the other professionals that operate in the succession space come in. So your accountant who's trained in this area, so they're coming from a tax and financial perspective. You'll then have your lawyers around structures, your financial planner. So I'm actually now finding that the advisors that are really clear that what lane they swim in and don't try to be all things to all people, they're the ones actually reaching out to me with their clients.
So in a sort of a bit of a nutshell, then, James, you are the one that you come in with there's a certain plan or a structure, and like after you've sort of gotten an idea as to what people's needs are, and then they've communicated those to you, you have a sort of an understanding of that. Then it's a matter of constructing the approach to address how we might be able to meet some of these needs, or what might be the more what are the realities and what's a fantasy in so many things. I could imagine that inside of some of those conversations, you've got people that have got a really inflated idea of the things they think they need and the things that they want. And the bridge between actually having a constructive conversation around that could get pretty interesting, I would have thought.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I say I do is hold the metaphorical mirror throughout what I'm doing. It's this dance that I have to play where I'm using my judgment and my skills, my training. So I've got to hold the metaphorical mirror to someone in a moment that they just need to think, oh, what are the implications here? So it's not for me to say, no, you can't have this or that. I'll never tell people that this is the roadmap. I actually work with them where they tell me, this will actually work for our family. But to get them to that point, if they're saying, for example, oh, look, that asset base, I think it should be divided equally, I will then hold the mirror and say, earlier on, you've told me that it's important that the family farm remain in the family, and that one of your needs is a physical need that you actually can visit. You drive up for weekends and you want to be there. And also, having looked at the last 10 years of financials, knowing what the profitability is, I'll then say, can you tell me how you can meet your need? And as also being acknowledged as other family members, that they want the farm to remain in the family. You know what history's shown in the last 10 years, and I love asking profitability for the last 10 years. It will capture the good, the bad, and the ugly in seasons. Mm-hmm. And then I'm saying, how might it be that you can actually still have the business if it's divided equally? So I pose it a question, and look, it's self-evident. Funnily enough, I'll often have parents tell me after a meeting, they'll say, I can't believe you asked little Johnny that, or Mary, and they just calmly responded. And my response is always, yes, because I come in with no baggage. Yeah. So I can ask a question, they'll answer as asked. Whereas if dad or mum asks, it's even within the first two words, people will have a visceral response within their body, because they're going straight away within a split second, we've been there, I know how this ends, and their body has a reaction and they don't think clearly. So that is the value in actually getting someone who's actually trained in this space and has the skills, someone removed.
I love that, James, because we had a couple of people have shared with us that everybody behaves themselves when somebody who is not in the situation directly is in the room. No one's blowing up, or, I'm sure that it does still happen, but there's a lot more conscious thought into the way people do respond and their behavior, because they're held to account all of a sudden. It's funny how we're so quick to hurt the ones who are closest to us.
The right. So like you're triggered, and when you're triggered, you're compromised, and that's basically, that's the end of the discussion, isn't it? So to be able to have somebody who's, impartial to that inside the room, and who actually can hold the space of the conversation intentionally, that is exactly the most invaluable piece of it, really, isn't it?
It is. And my sole focus is actually getting the family unit across the line where there is an in-principle agreement. I couldn't do my job if I went out and favoured or had a bias towards one individual. It's about understanding where they're coming from and getting the group thinking around, okay, how can we come through this process where ultimately we still want to sit around a table? And I've just recently done a job where it was one of my most challenging, and it was heated, and there were words said, and that in itself was cathartic for some of the people that were saying that. But it was me knowing when to step into that conversation. So there's a lot of judgment you've got to use, and then quickly be able to have the family having, someone throwing a grenade in on the table to then regroup and get them focused on what the objective is. And I think I'm fortunate in this job that it's also lived experience that I've got. So I'll use judgment when I share some of that lived experience, so I can normalize what's happening in the moment, but also give them a future position where, okay, this is the way it looks now, but with a bit of breathing space, as long as everyone leaves the meeting knowing what their opportunity is. And that is a strong focus I'll have throughout all of my meetings, that everyone has to know what their opportunity is. So Josh, I'm assuming in your succession, you had the opportunity as a result of succession to be a farmer in your own right. So that's your opportunity. And then if you have siblings, they'll have received other opportunities, whether it's to, and look, I don't want to make it about your family because I don't know anything about it, but I'll speak about the families. I can categorize the families that come to me, what they're looking for. And it's the one on the farm wants the opportunity to be a farmer so that they can actually row their own boat, and husband and wife actually then turn inwardly because there's not a third entity sitting between them, the in-laws or whatever. And then the siblings that are choosing not to be in the family business, assuming they want the farm to continue and they can then come and visit, they'll require something to create opportunity. So is that they receive money that allows them to put into shares that will then educate children, or buy a unit wherever they're living, or a home deposit, whatever it is, they'll want some opportunity. And I've found that when you can work through all this and people see their opportunity, and importantly, interests are aligned. So when the farm is signed over, if it can be done on the same day that the ones off farm receive, and I'm not saying all of what was agreed, ideally, if it can be done, great, but usually a lot of businesses can't. But even if they receive something, even if it's a small deposit to kick off something new, they then are excited and they turn to mum and dad with gratitude. And that's the key in all this. If you can actually see what you received and have gratitude, it then naturally flows that you will have healthier relationships and you actually will choose to come and sit around the table.
Yeah. Okay.
Do you, James, in your personal opinion, because I think families that do this very well, from what I hear, they create off-farm assets in the, for the future in case some of their children don't want to be a part of the farm, and they're able to give those. However, if a farming family was in a position where they hadn't done that and they didn't have anything, in your personal opinion, do you think it's a very sad thing to see the farm be split between siblings so that everyone gets a piece of the pie, rather than holding the farm together? Because I get a lot of messages about that, about financial stress placed onto the couple who wants to stay because it's fair, in air quotes, that their siblings get a third of the farm. What are your thoughts around that?
There's a lot in that question. If a family is telling me that they actually want the farm to continue, and I would say it's 95%. So that becomes the anchor in the discussion. And what I've seen around this claim around equal, it has actually increased noticeably for me in the last 5 years. Well, surprise, surprise, what have we seen in land values?
Wow.
So people outside are going, oh, look, you're really wealthy and the one on the farm. But I know, because I guess it's my reality, on paper I'm wealthy, but it's just on the balance sheet.
Yeah.
And then how do you then, and we have 3 children and we actually have just started, we had our second family meeting, my family, just recently. And that's not to decide who gets what, but it's actually what I call a stewardship meeting. Anyway, we can get onto that later. But getting back to your point, if a family is saying they want the farm to continue, there's a reality. It can't continue if it's divided equally. Your first part of your question, you said, when I come across families that have off-farm assets. Look, I'm internally cheering when I have that. I think, wow, it's a lot easier. But majority of my clients that come to me, they don't. So what I would say to your listeners, and it's something most won't have considered to be an asset, but is actually time, years' time. Because some parents will say to me, we couldn't possibly do it. There's too much debt. We want to reduce the debt, and then we'll have the conversation. And then I'll say, well, okay, think of your debt the way it is now. How long, knowing if you look back the last 10 years, profitability, and that profitability they're looking at isn't after they've actually taken their own drawings and paid down debt. So it's actually a lot less than what they're thinking if they really analyse their business. Then I'll say, with that, what was left to pay down your borrowings, how long is it going to take you to pay off the current debt? And they shudder. And then I'll say, okay, well, let's say you have really good years and you're doing it in 15 years' time. What do you think the asset base is worth? In 15 years, it's doubled. And then I'll say, so how do you think succession is going to go then? You've just made it harder. Whereas if you can actually accept, all of us, if we're custodians of land, we have the baton for a point in time. We just need to pass it on. And all succession I'm doing, there's a transfer of assets and debt, importantly, because why would mum and dad hand over assets without the debt? So by starting early, you actually hand over the land and the debt, and it's all how it appears within the family. So if the ones are off farm shuddering because they're going, oh my God, I can't believe Mary and her husband just took on that level of debt. Oh yeah, I understand they've got the asset. It's more palatable than having a conversation 15 years later where they go, look at Mary. She's absolutely wealthy, no debt. This is just a joke. So that's just an example where if you can have the conversation early and the ones taking on the debt and the farm actually have a clear runway. They know what the debt is. The land, they go, right, well, that asset is ours for this point in time, as in we're a custodian of it. We're not going to have a grenade lobbed in the family later where we beaver away, pay off debt within the family structure, only to have everyone else go, give me.
Yeah, okay. James, you're off the land, you're on the land, but you came from a successful succession result inside of your family, 3 siblings, and how that all went down. Can you talk about your experience inside of that and why you finally stepped into this zone, I suppose?
Yeah. So I consider myself and my siblings some of the luckiest people in rural Australia, because what my parents did is still, in my measure of success, one of the best succession I've ever seen, and clearly I'm the beneficiary of that. There was tension. And if anyone says to you there's not tension within a family dynamic, they're kidding. They're delusional. So clearly there was tension in the family. And it was my mother thinking, no, this can't continue on. And, one of us, because my brother and I were in partnership together, and look, one of us could have left. And my brother and I, we talk openly about it. And we both would have, done that because feeling frustrated. So my mother could see economies of scales aren't the reason you keep a family together. So she was the one who said, look, no, let's pursue looking at how we can separate. Now, what that did was we had a family meeting and we were gifted equity. So we didn't actually receive cash. It was just like the farm's going to be transferred to you. You're going to be gifted an amount, so at least you have some equity. There's going to be a registered mortgage over that property so that if we chose to run off to Rio, it's like, hang on, not so much. You still owe us money. Now, for your listeners out there, if they think they're just going to put a registered mortgage over a property and that's it, the courts will see through it unless it is viewed as something that is a commercial agreement, and commercial meaning that you are making the repayments as you said you would. So
has to be
my brother and I had the opportunity to start in agriculture in our own right. we learnt the value of debt. Now, I'm not sure how any family that doesn't take on debt to then have it for expansion purposes, how they're going to be in agriculture in the next, say, 2 generations. It's just a tough thing that we need economies of scale. And by having your name on debt, or attached to debt, it's because you've purchased an appreciating asset, and inflation does the heavy lifting over time.
So why do you say that, James, in particular? Like, what are you recognizing inside of is it the industry itself to see why people are, it's basically becoming a requirement?
Look, this is far beyond what I can do, but my observations are that profitability in agriculture is not that great, and it's been declining for a long time. So I recently had to speak on succession to advisors in Sydney, and I thought, well, I can never speak about someone's situation because that's their people that I work with. That's their personal thing, and that's my commitment to them. So I then looked at my own, and I went to this presentation that I was delivering. I went to this meeting where I was delivering, and I said, the poverty gundui, that is the one I'm talking about, that I gave you the example where my parents gave us equity. So I had this, and it's interesting, this is just something that parents listening may be interested in. Our parents gave us the same amount of equity. So my brother and I had the same amount. My sister actually received the same amount, but hers actually was cash for her to go and do as she pleases, whereas ours was in the form of land.
Yep.
So I went back and looked at Gundui in the last 30 years. Look at the appreciation. It has had an average annual increase of 12.9%. So the advisors in the room would go, whoa, this is good asset class. And then I spoke about what wheat prices had done in 30 years, and they've gone up 50%, let alone what costs. I wasn't able to get a handle on with the time frame I had, but I said they're probably 3 or 4-fold increase. And they're shaking their head going, this doesn't make sense from what we know. I said, yeah, but it's the reality. So,
yes,
yeah,
that's right. I think that's something that we're I think everyone's seeing it. It's quite incredible. I came away from a benchmark meeting yesterday, and this was something that was being, we were talking about quite extensively, which is, the profitability and the margins associated with the industry itself. And it's tightening up across the board. That's partially why we're doing what we're doing, is because we see the squeeze from all angles, and it's not getting any easier. And yet if we don't do something to start, bolstering and making this area and this industry more resilient, we're going to lose it. Like we're going to start seeing major corporatization basically coming and sweeping up all the crumbs, and the face of Australian agriculture will start to look a lot more like the American agricultural beast than it will in the good style, frontier style agricultural that we've established over these years. So, it's something that I think, when we're talking about succession, for everyone listening, succession is an internal factor that needs to be rectified, and it can be rectified if we're prepared to step into that and actually look at that, along with lots of other different things like financial securities and diversities and stuff like that. But this is all to say that because you've got all the other external factors that are coming in, we're drumming on the door. But whilst they're trying to chip away at us, it's like, but the internal factor of family dynamics, that's going to be the biggest tripping stone or stepping stone, however you're going to address this, that we can possibly really get on board with and talk about and expose. So,
James, do you consider, or at what point do you consider your clients reaching that level of success? Is there a point that you can breathe out and say, okay, I'm done? Because I think in our experience too, and going through only a small bit of succession, the support for implementation afterwards, I can see being very important. And if it's sort of not taken up and things actually not being implemented, that can probably be quite a hindrance to the success of what everyone has agreed. Because everyone seems, can be well behaved at the time, but then moving forward, that might not. So how do you sort of sure that doesn't happen?
There's a lot in that and a lot going through my head.
Sorry.
I answered that. And no, that's good. That's great. First of all, I'll just make a blanket statement, but it's true. And that is there's no problem between humans that has ever been solved in history without humans communicating.
Mm.
It is that simple when you boil it down. So what I have done, and clearly I have the privilege of being able to, or the skills I have, what I've seen, what have I lived experience, and me applying thought to this. I mentioned earlier in this conversation that I've recently had our second family meeting with our 3 daughters, and extremely wealthy families, they'll have these meeting structures and they'll call it family council. For my family, that didn't resonate with me, saying, oh, we're a family council and we're overlooking, all these different portfolios and whatever. For me, it was more about stewardship. So I call it our family stewardship meeting. And that is, how can we support one another? And it's not just like, what money do you want? And there was absolutely, last 2 meetings, there's no money exchanged. It's around reflecting on the last 12 months, what they've done individually within their lives. So we celebrate the wins and the learnings. We also talk about the future. And we have one of our children who is contemplating coming back to the business. And
How old are your girls? Sorry,
so Annabelle, she is our eldest and she's 25. So she may come back to our business. And at our meeting, it was agreed that she will go off and do other things and develop her professional skill set. And importantly, if she comes home, and it is an if, it'll be because she's experienced wonderful things and she's drawn back to it and she's actually making an informed decision. So it was important because, to be honest, for me personally, it'd be so much easier if she just came back. It makes my life a lot easier. But you've got to think of the long-term play. You want someone in your business that truly wants to be in it. So so that was talked about at our meeting. And then what we need to do, my wife and I, because on paper we're wealthy, but it's tied up in, by and large, in the land. So it's planning for off-farm assets and retirement. And then how do you assist the other 2 children who at our first meeting, and if your listeners are thinking, oh, what do we need to do? This is a gem, because what I've observed in succession is they're adult children, what is the next gen, they come to those meetings, some of them get confused with the love they think their parents extend to them based on what they are to receive and the value. Now, we can articulate that the 2 should not go together, but some people get confused. So to eliminate that, what I said at my first meeting with my 3 daughters is, you are all equally able to come into our business. But as you know, it's not big enough that you all just swan on in and we don't have to do anything else. So we all need to look at how do we expand, what other bolt-in businesses we can have and you operate, but you're all equally able to come in. If you do, well then in time, it'll be an equal division of asset. And then I said, who would like to? Now, the eldest Annabelle said she is interested in that. The other 2 said no, they're not. So then I importantly said, so this is a key piece for your listeners, I said, should Annabelle come into the business, we will then revert from equal to what is fair. And importantly, you will all be in that conversation as to what is fair. Now, that is the cornerstone going forward around our asset base. So we've dealt with that elephant. And my daughters have a very close relationship, and I was not going to let a family asset come in between that.
them.
So that's how I structured that piece. So it is dealt with.
What about if they have different ideas of what is fair,
And they will. I hope they do have different ideas. And we talk about it. But I'm laying down the foundations that is normalised to have these conversations. So the stewardship meeting once a year has us talking. And they go for a day. And it's that safe environment where, again, all are heard and understood. And what are we working towards?
When you were talking about what is fair and what is equal inside of that, I think that's really important point, because we hear a lot of feedback, and I've also experienced as well the fallout from the children or the next gen that have an attachment to the way that they are loved or appreciated by their parents in accordance to the fiscal, attribute, like the actual, like, how much money am I, like, if you give me that block of land and you give her that block of land, that means you don't love me as much. And it's like, to be able to start speaking about the fact that just because you don't receive as much does not mean that you are loved less.
Yeah.
It's because this makes sense, but it's like
That's a rare thing though, because actually what it's based on, James, is your beautiful relationship that you have cultivated with your daughters over the many, many years. And I think when children come into the scenario where maybe their relationship with their parents hasn't been as such, there's a direct correlation between those ideas and feelings get involved. And there's such a feeling of loss and sadness, because that's their only way to gauge their parents' love for them. So it really starts right back at the beginning. It's very deep, isn't it? Because it goes back to really how you steward your children and how you lead your family.
And it's like we're talking about this not for the now, not for these conversations going forward, like the immediate ones are already meant to be having now. But this is a conversation for those who are stepping into the future, these next generations that are, just having children now or just considering it. And it's like, well, if you want to have a good, grounded, constructive result, think about this now, because what you're putting in is going to be what you get out later on down the track. And I mean, there's too many horror stories to speak of where that hasn't been the focus.
Absolutely. And yeah, I am dealing with some of those, and my last job was one of those. There was a lot of emotion, and it was a very long meeting. But it's the first time I've actually said to a family, any family, I actually think the issues aren't your assets or your debt, it's the people, and you know that. And I got the nods. And then I said, I actually am going to recommend to you that you seek a family therapist. Now, up until this year, I didn't know any family therapists, but because of my involvement with the Family Business Association, it's a professional group that advise the really wealthy families of Australia. So I've, I guess, entered that world and seen who operates in there. So this family actually all agreed to see, and I now have 3 that I can recommend. So I'll think, who would actually the family collectively connect with? So I'll put forward a name. That family is going to pursue that option. So, but that's a side issue. But that's my sense that my values are based on the family unit coming through this process, and it's not my skill set to be working with them, unpacking, the interaction.
Yeah.
I'm employed to get a result.
Yeah.
Because you obviously walk into all of that.
It's a bloody minefield like that. That's the thing. Like you're usually the person that the first person any family unit's ever really done anything with like this. And so you've got to unpacking all of that back. Like how soon into sort of looking into a family of that ilk or that coming from that do you sort of recognize, oh no, this needs more than what I can actually give?
Look, I knew it before I walked into that meeting, but I don't shy away from it because I know I can still get them to a point of agreement. And I did. It was a 13-hour meeting, the longest I've ever done.
Wow.
It was solid. But the family, I have the advantage of looking back, and I can still say that I think they actually got the right outcome. I never told them what it was because my process has us exploring options, and that in itself is part of the process where people then get to a point where they go, oh, actually that option takes into consideration the financial constraints, the needs of everyone. Now, this particular family, they need the dust to settle on and with assistance, with a family therapist. But even when grenades were being thrown, it was so evident to me that there's a genuine love there. They actually, but they're just focusing on the short term. So I talk about having seen all this before, and that while you feel this is it and you're just going to go your separate ways. And even when I said that, and it's a bit me testing their resolve, you see them look and go, no, we're not going to go separate ways. It's like, okay, you just need a bit of space, but you've actually got the roadmap, how it could work. And in the family I'm thinking of, one is going to, he's not going to be in the business. So we worked out what his opportunities look like. And then I'm always thinking about how can we align interests? So let's say that a family agrees that they're going to do X, Y, Z. And then after 15 years or before 15 years, someone goes, this isn't for me. I'm out of here. I'm off to Rio. And so I then pose the question, how do you think you or your sibling, the one that's taken a lot less to see that this business continues, is going to feel? Do you think that they're going to be happy sitting around the table? And clearly everyone goes, not so much. So I always say, let's plan for the worst and then hope for the best. So in that situation, it's going to be that should one of them sell within an agreed time, and it can't be indefinite, it just can't go on forever. You need an end point. But if it's sold before that end point, there's going to be another one-off payment. Now, everyone in the family is thinking, and even the one that would receive it, they're thinking that's never going to happen. But at least we've been able to plan it when everyone wasn't emotionally attached with, oh my God, they sold a farm.
I love that you point that out, because I think that's probably for the off-farm children, that is their fear, is that even though, yes, a lot of the time the farm comes with a huge amount of debt, should the person choose to sell out after it's been given to them, that, they could still come out on top, even if it's not the full worth of the asset, but they still maybe come out with a pretty hefty payment in hand. And I think that is what worries the siblings for sure.
Absolutely. So I address, I'm fully aware what the concerns are.
Yeah.
I also point out, look, there could be reasons why it has to be sold. Ill health or poor economic conditions. It just has to be sold, and everyone's disappointed. But and talking about that, it actually gives the person who's taking on this responsibility at least a bit of breathing space, thinking, well, at least I have some certainty in my destiny. That I can make decisions because we had the formula. Should that decision be made for whatever reason, I know in my planning what I then have to do.
Yeah, because equally you don't want that person on the farm to feel like then if they did need to sell for whatever reason that they just could never, because, the siblings would be, it would be considered really unfair or whatever. And then they feel shackled. And like there's no autonomy around their choices. Maybe family circumstances change and they really do need to change their lifestyle.
Absolutely.
So, I love that.
It's just getting interest aligned so people can live their best life. That's what I'm tasked to do. How can I have it so the parents and then the siblings, the children, can live their best life? What does that look like? So I explore that with them.
Right. So, James, what would you say to somebody if you've got somebody approaches you, and maybe it's a sibling, maybe it's one of the wives, in-laws, or parents, or whatever, and they're the operation has basically, it's not like it's breaking down or burning down, but rather that it's just not going anywhere, and nobody wants to talk about what they need to talk about. Like the communication's sort of broken down. They'll talk about the shallow things, but not the deeper things. And like there's like a stagnation inside of direction. Like all of a sudden the vision's starting to fall away, and then everyone's getting older, but nothing's actually changing. What do you sort of like? What would you say to somebody who's sort of saying, I don't know what to do with this. I can't really talk to anybody here. This is not really going anywhere. What do I do?
So I'll pose questions rather than make statements, because I know that by posing questions it stimulates thinking as opposed to statements. And you know yourself, when Steph's saying, Josh, you haven't done this, you're going, la, la, la.
I would
Or
never, James. I don't know what you're talking about.
Whereas if you actually pose it as a question, Josh will go, oh, okay, you might have a point.
I mean, like,
Now-
"Oh, have you taken the rubbish?" Like that kind of good question.
So to answer the question, I'll pose questions that has the person asking me recognize the cost of doing nothing. And there is a cost. There'll be personal cost, eroding time to actually continue to build the well. And it's just a natural phenomenon with humans. We have our productivity, and sometimes I'll draw the actual bell curve and explain this productivity and how over time it starts falling off. Now, the smart business owners that recognize the next generation come with their own bell curve will then transfer management, at least at the top end, when the prior generation starting to come back off their peak. They're on the downhill run. So I get them to see that. And
I like that though. I like just in that one point there. What's the cost of not doing anything? Like that's super important just to recognize. If there's a passivity and nobody's taking up the buck, like no, sorry, taking up the ball, then what's it going to look like if you just keep on letting this wind down, or go nowhere?
And do you find, James, really that's a real phenomenon where if the patriarch it's in the heyday, he's in his heyday, but he wants to keep hanging on to that, it really does start to decline? Like, what causes that? Why can't he? Is it because he's got the young and up and coming, and that affects, if everyone's trying to manage and you've got the patriarch and the next generation, is it the clash of ideas that causes the downfall of the business?
It'll be a combination of things. Clashing of ideas, particularly if someone's identity is attached to what they do and being a farmer. And fortunately for me, I had a father whose identity was attached to being a farmer, and he was a very successful farmer. He was in partnership with his brother, and then that partnership split, and mum and dad were in partnership together. We were concerned when Dad went to town. And as I said to you earlier, the best succession, or one of the best, I'm the beneficiary of. So my parents moved to town at 60. And at the time of 28, I thought, well, that's normal.
Wow.
So, but because that's been my model and I've seen all the benefits that come from it. Now, Dad he actually still had some land where he ran sheep, but it was on a much different level and scale. But he got to town, and to our surprise, he actually embraced it. He was on the cancer support committee, the Lions committee, and he was someone who gave, and he had the ability to give time. So it was wonderful, and he'd come out and give us a hand if we asked. And I'll never forget ringing my father when he first moved there and said, "Dad, can you give me a hand with sharing?" And he went, "Oh, hang on, I'll just check my diary." Well, Dad never had a diary. He had to see whether he was free. It was great.
So good.
Wow. That's
So just
that's so, like, can we just like take a second, how that's rare. That's like, I mean, from everyone we've spoken to and everything like that, that's very rare to actually see like a father, like the patriarch, and actually take himself out of the picture, especially as having such an identity as a farmer, and then to be able to shift like that. That's quite a depth of character, really, isn't it? Like,
because I literally saw a guy the other day. It was in America, and he was being interviewed, but he was 97. And his son was managing, but his son was 78, and everyone just cracked up. But I think for all the farming community out there, they were like, "Yeah, I get it," and it's not as funny as everyone thinks it is. And it's very interesting.
What I'll have observed around Australia, you'll have pockets where people do it well, and I would say Narromine is an area that has done it well. So what happens is the parents go out socially and they're talking and they normalise this. So I'm 55, and at 28 took on land, and I can think of numerous people in our community where that happened, around, or give or take,
Yeah,
years. It was normalized, and narrow mind's a productive go ahead area. And then you'll go to some other areas where the older generation complaining, the young aren't coming, but what have they done to encourage? So to your listeners, if they are of an elderly age and they're just not sure how to progress, have a conversation that explores options. So in my process, I'll make it really clear we are not locking this in. It's just an idea. It's just an option. And then we will park it and we move on to another option building. And normally what's happening is they pull out from the previous option the parts of it they liked, plug it into the next option, and they're building upon it. They're doing it, and they get to a point where they go, I think this is going to work for all of us. And because they've built it, it actually sticks. They own it, as opposed to someone who says, I'm a succession advisor consultant. Here is the map. And I've certainly seen where some out there are saying they're doing it, taking that approach, and it's not sticking, and it causes a lot of angst within a family. And then I'm mopping up that mess.
Actually, James, I have another question for you. I think at the beginning we touched on the fact that there are a lot of split off kind of subgroups to succession. Would you say that a family needs to consider any other form of, for lack of a better term, training before they come and see you?
The ideal, again, I'll give you the ideal, and I've touched on it along the way. I think having the family stewardship meetings is a great way to normalise communication. And initially it'll feel a bit foreign, but start doing that. And
like,
in that,
you mean that just internal, like not an external?
Yeah. So I'm giving the ideal. So internally, you just do it, and it could be when they're young. And I remember my brother saying he did this with his young children. Mum and I want you to plan a holiday, and here's the budget. And it wasn't their annual holiday. I think it was a long weekend, but it got them excited about doing that. So if you did something like that within your family, again, you normalise it. But to external, I would suggest that you actually get someone who's actually trained specifically in facilitating these conversations. And to be honest, there's not a lot of people that are. There's people that say, oh yeah, I'll facilitate a conversation. And when you look, what have they done? They might, I won't incriminate anyone, but they're just saying, oh, I worked in a particular field and now I do this. Dig deep, find out where their training is coming from. They actually need to be trained in the ability to observe human behaviour, understand what they're seeing, and then understand what levers are available to actually pull to get influence.
So a communications expert, for example, would be a precursor to then going into a succession planning.
Well, so some families still think their business is secret squirrel. Like, yeah, I understand. I don't shout from the rooftops what my assets are, but my wife and I years ago joined. It was principal focus, but there's RCS and now Farm Owners Academy, and I know that you've spoken to Ben Law. He offers a wonderful program. So if people can actually enter into that, because it's actually having that third point, the person who's running it, getting you to develop the communication systems and understand your business, understand the people in your business. So I love it if I then will work with someone that's done that. Now, Ben's very generous in that some of his clients, he spent a lot of time working around the communications, and then he will introduce them to me because he's really clear what lane he swims in.
Yes.
And he knows, he says, I don't want to do what you have to do. He's really clear on that.
That's something that's very, it's very encouraging. And I've got to say this because with the people that we've sort of been interviewing, and in a way, it's almost like a vetting of, who's what and where they're coming from. But it's like, Ben Law knows where he's swinging. Katie God knows where she's swinging. You know where you're swinging. We're seeing this sort of this lineup. And it's like, no, I don't go there. Or like even with regards to they need to see a family therapist, or as in to actually hold the space for some of the things that they're going through in regard, like that's not my place to be, but this is where my place to be. So I'm not going to say I can do it all out of any kind of ego, because there's a lot of people that we've spoken to that've had very bad experiences with succession planning, and to the point where it becomes a dirty word. Now, I'm not saying that all the succession planners are necessarily in the wrong here. Obviously, you've got families that have a level of toxicity inside of their relationship that's already at, red light
Max
levels.
level.
And it's a matter of, can you actually, work with that? Or are you prepared to sort of say, actually, this is something that you need to resolve before we can actually enact anything, because it's just not, communication is broken down entirely. None of you want to let go of the core issue or whatever that might be. So it's just very interesting, because we don't want, we want to see people lined up with the right kind of advice.
Yeah, and I think through the conversations that we've had over this season of basically all succession, bar from a couple of conversations, what we've found is that there are quite a few different facets to this, and those people who know where they stand on their particular piece of expertise, coupled together as a team, creates a really fantastic program that is available for people to create success in their family farms.
James, thank you so much, mate. That's all we have time for today with James Hamilton. I know that was a bit of a short cut, but that's all right, because listen, the guy's packed full of wisdom, and we're going to have more to do with James in the coming seasons. So I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Just like to shout out and say thank you so much for everybody who's following us. It means the world to us. And it's just great to have you all on for this journey as we discuss more of the impacts, both external and internal, around family farming and country culture of Australia in general. Guys, if you've got some ideas, thoughts, or anything else that sort of comes to mind that you'd like to see us dive into on the podcast, please don't hesitate to give us an email and we'll see what we can do. Other than that, guys, hope you're having a great day, and I'll catch you later.
Welcome to hard ground. Welcome to hard ground.